After 6 years under the spell of a covert narcissist who claimed to want change but thrived on manipulation, I moved out only to find B, my family, still entangled. I want to help him, B insisted while I broke down. You're not safe. Now I've rebuilt my life. How did I regain my power? This began as a comment in response to another comment on a video discussing different types of narcissists. Before I realized it, the comment had grown significantly, prompting me to transfer what I was writing to my notes. Memories began to surface, and for the first time I wanted to express everything, especially since I could access those memories. I used to think I was one of very few people aware of narcissists, but it has become widely recognized, and now the different types are being classified. The comment inquired about what constitutes a covert narcissist, a type that the video did not address, only mentioning the 6 other types: grandiose, vulnerable, self-righteous, communal, malignant, and neglectful. First and foremost, I believe a narcissist can exhibit several of these types simultaneously. However, what I believe distinguishes a covert narcissist is their indirectness, as they utilize nuances, implications, gestures, and expressions. They may even admit to being narcissists and plead for help, claiming they genuinely want to change if they are eventually caught. I think this compels them to switch between the various types to conceal their manipulation and cover their tracks. I managed to summarize my thoughts without delving into the entire story, but I needed to share this. I felt compelled to relieve myself of this burden and to let others know they are not alone. There is a way out, though it may be painful. Believe me, it is worth it. There was a man, whom I will refer to as A, who lived with us and dated a family member, whom I will refer to as B. I believe he embodied a combination of the 6 types. He could be charming and charismatic, displaying traits of the grandiose type, but he primarily represented the vulnerable type, playing the victim to elicit pity. Self-righteousness was evident in his greedy money habits, as he contributed very little to groceries and bills while manipulating B into believing he was doing his best, all while spending most of his money on marijuana. He also exhibited malignant traits, as he often became hostile before reverting to vulnerability, pleading sorry while justifying his desires and blaming others. He demonstrated neglectful tendencies, ignoring B and everyone else, and he showed self-righteousness toward family members who were struggling. However, he would occasionally give to cover his own tracks and present a communal front, suggesting that those struggling simply needed to work harder, or he would claim he had given everything he had. In reality, he spent all his money and provoked fights until we contributed money for his marijuana, only to later apologize and cry, expressing that he wanted to change and that B inspired him. He used all of this as a tactic to manipulate, primarily to keep B close while shutting everyone else out one by one. A's actions were often subtle, carried out through gestures, expressions, and implications. It was not until he felt he had effectively convinced others that he began to express things more directly, but always in a manner resembling that of a hurt little boy. The following situations played out multiple times. He would ignore B, projecting sadness until B finally reached out to ask what was wrong. After a few instances of B expressing genuine concern, he would eventually respond and convince B that he needed what he desired, claiming that if B truly loved him, they would fulfill his wishes. Or he would blame external factors as being detrimental to their relationship. He was extremely psychologically abusive to those he attempted to isolate, convincing us that we were the problem. Although his apologies often seemed sincere and convinced us, the seeds he planted slowly grew into a rift, turning everyone against one another, with each person believing that issues had existed all along without realizing he had instigated them, emphasizing minor bad traits to make them seem larger than they were. He was adept at feigning empathy, presenting himself as supportive before suddenly diverting attention to anything he deemed important, effectively distracting others and negating focus on them. If someone spoke up, he would crumble, apologizing for being a terrible person, which made us feel guilty. I became aware of these dynamics and attempted to inform B, striving to make everyone else conscious of the situation. As a result, I became A's primary target for elimination. He pushed me to the brink of madness, psychologically affecting me while skillfully portraying himself as the actual victim, claiming I was picking on him and not giving him a fair chance. I would break down in tears, recounting how he would mistreat me when no one was observing. He was more abusive when alone with me, often making me feel invisible, bumping into me as if I were not present, genuinely perplexed, as if he had collided with a ghost. I often refrained from eating or cooking and confined myself to my room or sat in one place, trying to remain out of reach. However, once he was believed by everyone and attention turned to me, he would wear a horrific grin that turned my stomach. It was like something out of a horror movie. I wanted to die, feeling as though I were the terrible one while others believed I was exaggerating. He would also wear that same grin, which I later learned when he devised plans to start conflicts. He would apply the slightest nuances and gestures until the targeted person reacted with upset, believing it was an intentional provocation. I will explain a specific situation later. He continued to maintain a rapport with others while occasionally casting them in a poor light. Whenever he behaved directly manipulative, B or others began to become aware of his behavior though not yet fully realizing his tactics. He would then apologize, pleading that he did not mean to and that he wanted to change. Rarely did I receive apologies, but occasionally I would get a tearful one from him, often prompted by B threatening to leave. He would cry and insist he wanted to change and do better. On several occasions, B attempted to break up with him, but it had an almost magical hold over B's spirit, always managing to win them back. In the beginning, I was convinced we could help him. I often reassured myself of this belief, knowing that B would bring him back regardless of what I said, hoping to preserve our relationship. His goal of living alone with B to isolate them eventually materialized. B believed that being alone would facilitate assisting A. However, financial constraints arose because I was lazy but acted as if he were hardworking whenever someone observed him. There was a period when we all worked together, ultimately leading them back to our family home, where he blamed everyone else for their struggles. B continued to think that living alone with A would be advantageous, as during their time together in another city, their only communication was through text, which B believed was better for A. What B did not realize was that A had gotten what he wanted, while B overworked themselves due to health concerns. Ultimately, this neglect severely impacted B's physical and mental well-being. I eventually moved out, the first to do so. This was necessary because I felt like the primary target. I also believed it might serve as a wake-up call for B, which it did. Initially, I moved into the recreational vehicle in the driveway. B realized how extreme this was, particularly considering it was winter and I had no propane for heating, the system was broken, nor was there water. Thankfully, I had electricity. I would use the bathroom inside, but sparingly because I had no way to drain the sewage tank, instead filling jugs with water from inside. I attempted to manage bathing and other tasks when I was not home. A friend discovered my situation, told their parents, and they immediately invited me to live with them in their spare bedroom. I will always be grateful for their kindness. My move provided a sense of safety that alleviated the weight of living with A. It took 6 years, during which other family members also moved out due to the limits being pushed, to finally make B realize that I was set in his ways, fully aware of his behavior, and not interested in actually changing it was destroying the family. When B finally broke up with A, I moved back in. One pivotal incident that contributed to A's exposure occurred when he often gave me disturbed and disgusted looks while passing by when no one was watching. When we all worked together, we had to wear respirators and protective suits. I appeared quite similar to B in this attire. He passed by B. I was close but far enough away that he could not discern my identity. And fortunately, he mistakenly expressed that look toward B, thinking B was me. I did not witness this directly, but from my peripheral vision, I could see B's body sag as they visibly froze, then ask A, "What the hell was that?" A laughed, claiming he thought B was me, completely unaware of what B was discussing, which made the mistake even worse, but only for him. B stood in shock. I cannot recall all the specifics, but I believe B might have brushed it off until I walked away. I approached B, who looked at me in horror on the verge of tears and told me they believed me. There was no denying it, they had witnessed firsthand what I had been describing. I burst into tears, almost laughing at A's stupidity while simultaneously feeling horror for the pain B was yet to endure. Although I eventually managed to win B over again, this incident initiated a gradual change, allowing me to feel closer to B once more, safer for a brief period. Things cooled down and I convinced B that he wanted to change and did not harbor any hatred toward me, which was obviously false. Nonetheless, a level of trust reemerged between B and me, which ultimately contributed to B's eventual awareness of A's narcissism. Throughout this time, B researched ways to assist A and learned about narcissism, yet remained unable to perceive the complete picture, while I, having distanced myself from the relationship, could see clearly. Other household members were adversely affected. One individual could not cope with the abuse inflicted upon the family and became isolated, while another, whom I shall call C, excused A's behavior. This will be further elaborated, and painted me as the villain. C had multiple partners during this time, many of whom ultimately recognized the truth. Even though C would agree with them, they would revert to supporting A, claiming he was not that bad, stating I had exaggerated, that I genuinely wanted to change and they wanted to support him. B's partners, although aware of the reality, spoke no opposition as it would obviously anger C, yet were kind to me until C persuaded them I was the problem. This situation did not endure. Although my friendships with these individuals initially suffered, they eventually recognized the ongoing manipulation and broke up with C. However, moving out resulted in me losing someone who made me feel safer, which was ultimately beneficial for them. They needed to escape. This was a hellish experience. C's last partner, whom I will refer to as D, had been a friend of mine prior to their relationship with C. C managed to convince D for a time that I was the issue. I knew that D would eventually come to the truth, as I had known them for a while. D did become aware, though occasionally they were influenced by C's manipulation against me. However, they quickly recovered from that influence and remained a good friend to me. This infuriated C, who eventually broke up with D, framing a minor skirmish as domestic abuse. I was furious and attempted to confront C carefully, knowing they would use any confrontation to further damage my reputation with everyone supporting A, ultimately making my position worse in the house, which they succeeded in doing. Forgive me, D, as I pretended to side with C to navigate the situation. I managed to escape this predicament, although my relationship with D fluctuated for a time. We remain friends, though I feel they have changed significantly. Witnessing how these two individuals destroyed the lives of so many, leaving broken spirits in their wake, caused me to suppress memories that once felt like a beautiful life. I was simply unaware of how C had affected my life, the family, and myself. I lost myself profoundly. The memories have become so indistinct, cloaked in walls I built around them to avoid the pain. After the final breakup, B was left utterly destroyed, much as C, who I later realized was also in fact a narcissist, had encouraged A's belief that he could change as a way to mask their own behavior. In turn, this also justified C's ongoing attacks on me. C, now lacking an ally to defend their behavior and having to explain why they had supported A while still acknowledging his negativity, endeavored to convince everyone that I was the problem. They eventually moved out, leaving B and me with rent well beyond our means, making it almost impossible to find a place or afford to move. We had no time before their departure, abruptly thrusting this upon us. All our funds went to rent. B was resistant to finding roommates, and any potential places I found fell through. B was devastated and void of belief in anything, which I do not blame them for, but it left me to manage everything. Due to health issues, B ceased working, and despite the support offered by our boss, B simply quit. I panicked, realizing I would need to cover the rent on my own. I persuaded B to apply for employment insurance. However, they struggled to make phone calls, making it arduous to speak with EI on their behalf. The situation worsened as B consistently had C around, adversely affecting my mental state. I felt on the verge of snapping. At this point, I understood I could no longer assist B. I was at the brink of losing myself beyond recovery. I ultimately decided to move out on my own, the hardest decision I ever made. However, I knew C would allow B to stay with them and their partner despite their partner's opposition. At that point, enough was enough. Everyone had made their choices, and if that was what C wanted to pursue, good luck to them. As time passed, C left their partner, and now the family all lives together again, including another toxic family member who they all ran to for support. Although we could have all lived together again, C has manipulated everyone into believing I am the villain except for one family member with whom I still maintain contact. When I initially moved out, I found a new target, and this was when the remaining family member realized I was not exaggerating my experience. They quickly forgave me, as A is, quite frankly, a demon on earth. He had managed to fool me for a long time too. While this family member is profoundly distressed mentally, I suspect they are not fully aware of their condition. We remain in contact. My aftermath has been tumultuous. Occasionally, certain individuals brought some light back into my life, those who believed me and helped restore some of my sanity. I do not know how, but these people seem to vanish, possibly due to the influence of C and other family members, or perhaps I became clingy, fearing a loss of connections. I lost my entire family, and my situation became too overwhelming for many to face, leading some to drift away for that reason. Additionally, they were frustrated that I did not leave sooner. I felt I would be abandoning them. However, I now know they were the ones who abandoned me. The last friend I had, whom I will call E, entered my life after the breakup, but prior to my final decision to move out following B's resignation. E was there for me and aided in rebuilding my self-esteem. I rediscovered who I was and completely forgot about my former self. Suddenly, I found myself in a healthier living situation, even though I was on workers' compensation because I initially lost my job due to everything affecting my mental health, which caused outbursts. Shortly thereafter, I was sexually assaulted within the first 2 weeks of starting a new job. Although being on workers' compensation provided stable income, it was not an ideal living situation. It felt like gold compared to what I had endured previously after losing everything. During this period, E left, starting to date a new partner I shall refer to as F. I believe F did not appreciate my presence for multiple reasons I can only assume, one being that I had some feelings for E, although none that would ever interfere with their relationship. E's friendship meant far more to me. I sensed that F did not want me around, though E never directly confirmed this. It was clear, especially when I experienced a breakdown and needed E's support due to losing my job and being assaulted. I rarely saw him anymore, and when I reached out, F texted from E's phone, essentially saying I was nothing special and to fuck off. I was blocked from all phone communication and social media. I again felt as if I wanted to end my life, questioning what worth there is in living. The one thing that saved me was my cats. I could not abandon them, as they were my precious babies. Additionally, I had a close friend I did not see often but became closer with recently, along with two friends I just met in a group I had joined. I barely knew them but felt a strong connection, which shocked me given that I had lost all hope for meaningful relationships. Together, they showed me that, despite being unaware of my past and only knowing about the assault, along with memories of how much he had cared, I could begin the process of rebuilding my life. I am uncertain where I found the strength or how I maintained trust in anyone, but eventually life began to turn around. I now hold a lease on an apartment, an actual place of my own. My landlord is amazing, especially when compared to my last one, another nightmarish story altogether. I have my two cats who I received from E's ex, and they connect me to him in some way since they know him. It might seem silly, but losing best friends hurts worse than losing a romantic partner. I had always thought that lovers come and go, yet I assumed that best friends in such a close relationship would remain. Nonetheless, my cats are my everything. They provide me with a reason to live. Their personalities resemble those of people, and they understand me profoundly. As I write this, they are coming to comfort me. My one cat is trying to nudge me to stop typing, believing my phone is causing me sadness. He hates it when I use it. He is right. He looks out for me, and he also ensures I stay hydrated, as I often forget. Another significant occurrence recently was my doctor, who is genuinely helping me with numerous health issues. I am finally receiving diagnoses and treatments which are improving my health drastically. I have also been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which has elucidated so much about my life, including why I often forget to drink water. My conditions did not assist during challenging situations. I would tend to freeze and fawn rather than exhibit fight or flight responses. However, during moments of high anxiety, especially when provoked, I would switch to fight and then flight, which did not benefit me in any regard. I have come to understand that it is best to report issues to an authority figure, particularly because this seems to have affected my work life the most. I frequently informed superiors that I was looking into what was wrong with me. I felt like I did not fit into society and struggled to comprehend why people seemed to harbor negative feelings toward me. Moreover, I felt extremely spacey, though I managed to complete my work, especially while collaborating with E and a few other foremen and workers. Most of the other foremen and higher-ups treated me poorly, while others, who were entirely unproductive, received favorable treatment. I now recognize it was merely a toxic work environment, but being neurodivergent didn't help my situation either. I still face other health issues that are being diagnosed, but I have established a solid foundation now, a life I never thought I would achieve. I have a home, my beloved fur babies, and friends who are like family. These friends have shown me what genuine friendship is meant to embody. I can have an off day, make mistakes, and still not feel hated or abandoned. I am relearning how to communicate and reclaim my rights, as they are teaching me to advocate for myself to prevent future assaults. I have support from my workers' compensation team, who are helping to rebuild my confidence, teaching me how to handle workplace situations, assert myself, and establish boundaries to avoid assault from occurring again. I have regained my hobbies and passions, allowing me to fully immerse myself without being told to shut up. I am learning to embrace my musical interests proudly while also exploring new hobbies that bring me joy without the fear of criticism. I am discovering techniques to manage my ADHD and learning to unmask, at least around trusted individuals, while understanding my autism and developing healthier self-treatment techniques in interactions with others. I no longer compel myself to socialize in environments where I feel uncomfortable. Moreover, I have an amazing roommate with whom I get along marvelously. We relate so much that we became best friends within weeks. I can hardly believe this is my life. Looking ahead, I aim to find the strength to work again. I can envision saving money beyond a few $100s. Perhaps I will even reach a point where I am open to finding a partner. Who knows? I now feel I have various paths and choices to explore. Today, I find myself contemplating what I might be capable of. By expressing myself, I hope to shed the habit of suppressing these feelings. Though occasionally I experience moments of despair, fearing the loss of everyone close to me, they continually remind me that I am not alone. I genuinely believe there is always a way out. In fact, I plan to have this tattooed, my first one, inspired by a significant interest of mine, Doctor Who. He has mentioned it only 2-3 times, yet conveys the message consistently. I now feel so much stronger and more alive. I finally feel like I possess a life worth living. Story 2. Hoping my cousin Ava cuts ties with her psychopathic mom at 18 after the lies that cost my uncle his life. She misses her dad every day, but the horror continues as her mother mocks his death. How long before Ava escapes this nightmare? This is a throwaway account. This is my first time ever posting on Reddit. I just need to express this somewhere. I am warning you now, this is going to be a long post with a lot of personal background information. Trigger warning. Intense psychological manipulation, mentions of suicide, light alcohol use, infidelity, divorce, and generally psychotic behavior. I am a 19-year-old female, and my cousin is currently 15. These events took place a few years ago and are a very sensitive topic for my family. I will be using fictitious names and urge people not to try to find out who I or anyone else in this story is. There was already a lot of drama and stress for my family when this all occurred, and I do not want it to resurface in my life again. The individuals in this story include myself, my 15-year-old cousin, who I will refer to as Ava, my 18-year-old cousin Becca, my uncle Ace, and finally the problematic individual, my ex-aunt Kia. This all began several years ago. I think I was around 12 when I first started noticing changes at my aunt and uncle's house. I was extremely close to Becca for most of our lives since she was born. Our family would often mix us up despite our different hair colors because we looked and acted similarly. She was definitely my favorite cousin. After a family trip, I ended up staying with my aunt and uncle for a week. We live about 3 hours away from them, so visits usually lasted a few days and we would go months without seeing one another. Thus, I was very excited to spend time with Becca. Ava, Becca's younger sister, usually joined us as well. We made a fantastic trio. However, it was always apparent that my Aunt Kia favored Becca over Ava. Because of this, my Uncle Ace ensured that Ava received a bit of extra affection. I also made an effort to include her even though we weren't particularly close. Not even a day into my week-long visit, I noticed that Becca was quite different from the last time I saw her. She was more focused on her phone during my stay and prioritized her friends who lived nearby over spending time with me. I was okay with this. I was a little disappointed that she didn't seem to like me as much as before, but it was her life, and she should be able to choose how she spends her time. What bothered me was how materialistic she had become. She became overly concerned with her appearance and was fairly active on social media. Again, this was her life, so I did not dwell on it. I simply noted how she seemed to prioritize materialistic things over people suddenly. With Becca being so distant, I ended up becoming much closer to Ava during that week. She introduced me to a delightful show about baking with magical ingredients. We watched nearly the entire series while I was there and played Animal Jam together on our devices. They lived in an apartment complex that had a pool along with other amenities. The pool was our favorite place. We went almost every day and had a blast each time. One day, craving caramel apples, we walked to the local grocery store, bought Granny Smith apples, and learned how to make caramel from scratch. It turned out wonderfully, and we made caramel apples for everyone in the house. I mention this because it is one of my fondest memories. I grew very close to Ava and had an amazing week. Kia and Ace worked during the day and were mostly gone while I was visiting, leaving us kids at home. I did not think much of it at the time, but in hindsight, Kia was certainly a bit more distant with my uncle than before. A couple of years later, I believe, after my week-long visit with them, Kia and Ace announced that they were getting divorced. This came as a shock to me because, as far as I knew, they had never had any issues with one another. I did not learn the full story until just a couple of years ago. Essentially, my uncle had been drinking alcohol at home occasionally. Not enough to become extremely intoxicated, and he was never violent or anything like that, but enough that it began to bother Kia. I now know that Kia had also been cheating on my uncle with a man she had met who was earning significantly more money than my Uncle Ace. Kia accused Ace of infidelity as well, but he was not cheating. Kia deceived the girls and managed to convince Becca that her father had been unfaithful first. A few things you should know about Ace. He was the kindest, most genuinely good person you would have ever had the pleasure of meeting. He was very empathetic and treated everyone he encountered as if he had known them for years. He was also very funny, always managing to lighten the mood, and everyone loved having him around. Many of his coworkers quickly considered him as close as family. He had a gift for connecting with people and building positive relationships very quickly. He was never the type of person to intentionally harm anyone. Even when Kia confessed to cheating on him, he stated that if she was willing to try to work things out, he could eventually forgive her. Kia refused, and Ace agreed to the divorce. It was not long before they were divorced. Kia was living with her boyfriend, and they shared custody of the girls. Once everything was finalized, Kia told my uncle that they were on good terms and that she would never fight over custody or any of his assets. This turned out to be a lie. Initially, she went about it secretly, but she was attempting to keep the girls away from their father. Both girls were in therapy after the divorce, and it was recommended that they receive emotional support animals. Kia only allowed them to get pets that she knew Ace was allergic to. Thus, the girls would be unable to take their pets when visiting Ace's house. I am sure there were other sneaky and manipulative ways that Kia used to keep the girls to herself, but the pets are the only example I know much about. At this point, I saw neither of my cousins very often. Becca and I would still occasionally communicate over Instagram, but it was infrequent. I had no way to contact Ava. I think about a year or so after the divorce, Becca expressed something in therapy that was extremely concerning. She told her therapist that Ace had bitten her on her chest when she was 12 years old. This was an absolutely outrageous accusation to surface all of a sudden. She even claimed that he had drawn blood from the bite. A bite like that would have left a scar, yet there was no physical evidence to be found at all. It was also very strange that this story emerged a few years after the fact, and only when Kia was doing crazy things to keep her kids away from Ace. This was considered sexual assault on a minor. The therapist contacted Kia and she corroborated the story. She claimed to have witnessed the incident. At this point, authorities became involved and the girls were not allowed to see their father at all. I do not know if Ava was informed of the reason at the time, but I understand how much she loved her dad and was unfairly treated by her mom, so I cannot imagine she was happy with this sudden change in her reality. A little note about Kia: she works in helping women escape from difficult situations. I do not know exactly what she does, but I understand that she talks to many women in various circumstances and assists in their cases to get out of them. Usually it involves domestic violence, alcohol, or substance abuse and similar issues. Essentially, a situation similar to what Becca described to her therapist. During this entire ordeal, Ace had to hire lawyers and seek legal assistance to respond to these allegations. He was immediately terminated from his job, and his life rapidly became a living nightmare. Allegations of sexual misconduct involving minors are taken very seriously, and it is one of the few legal accusations that is often viewed as guilty until proven innocent. While this precaution is in place for good reasons, particularly to protect individuals who are genuinely in danger, my uncle was innocent. Proving that would be very challenging. He spent the next 2 or 3 years of his life trying to prove his innocence, spending every penny he had in the process solely to regain his daughters. At the very least, he wanted Ava back. At that point, Becca had essentially disavowed Ace as her family and had begun calling Kia's boyfriend Dad. This shattered my uncle. He loved his girls immensely. It breaks my heart to think of Ava in that situation as well. She had so much love for her dad and was only permitted to video call him occasionally and under extreme scrutiny. She knew he was innocent, and she was being punished alongside her dad for Becca and Kia's lies. Ace underwent various psychological evaluations since there was no other way to prove his innocence. Once again, he spent every penny he had. His diet consisted mostly of ramen as it was all he could afford during this time. He was extremely depressed and suicidal. After an enormous amount of tests, every psychologist concluded that he was mentally incapable of committing the actions he was accused of. Our family celebrated that finding as it was the only evidence in the entire case aside from the testimonies of Becca, Kia, and the therapist that supported Ace. But Kia refused to drop the charges. I should also mention that Ace's legal team informed him that the way Kia and Becca presented their story seemed very peculiar. The same details were either consistently mentioned or omitted, as if they were reading from a rehearsed script. One time while testifying, Kia told the judge that she was aware of the incident when it occurred. The judge then informed her that knowing about this and taking no action would be considered endangerment, and she could face charges from the state, potentially serving 5 years in prison. Suddenly, her story changed. She claimed she had no knowledge of any of it until Becca's therapist got in contact. There are so many unfortunate blunders on Kia and Becca's part that make it evident that these were false accusations. I genuinely believe that Kia brainwashed Becca into believing her father was a terrible person and convinced her to lie in such a manner as to incriminate Ace. And Ava was a victim by proxy throughout this ordeal. At one point when Ace had the girls they visited for the 4th of July, Becca hardly interacted with anyone. She got into a big argument with my grandmother and Becca only insulted Ace. My grandmother defended her son and spoke ill of Kia in response. Becca had Kia pick her up and take her back to their home 3 hours away. This could have been considered kidnapping as it was Ace's turn with the girls, but he let it go to avoid further legal drama. During their stay, Ava confided in me about everything. She expressed how she missed her dad more than anything, felt unloved by her mom, despised her mom's current husband and his children, and felt as if no one cared about her anymore. I still cry when I think about that conversation, wishing more than anything that I could have helped her. One night, Kia called the police. She had done this before to get Ace arrested. I do not know what she reported, and I doubt I will ever know. All I know is that this latest call would have likely led to his imprisonment. Child predators are not treated well in prison. They are often beaten severely by other inmates. They are regarded as the scum of the earth, and rightfully so. It pains me to know that so many people viewed my uncle as one of them. I suspect Kia informed him that the police were on their way. I do not know this for certain, but I know he realized they were coming, and if he were arrested, his life would become far worse than it already was. He drove just a few miles from home and waited. The police found him and attempted to access the vehicle as my uncle shot himself, committing suicide in the driver's seat. I need to pause for a moment while writing this. Even 4 years later, it hurts so much to reflect on it. My uncle, probably the best person I have ever met, committed suicide due to the lies of his own daughters and my deranged ex-aunt making him out to be a criminal. My family wanted nothing to do with Kia and Becca. They were prohibited from attending the funeral. Ava was the only member of their family permitted to attend. She was incredibly brave to come alone. I stayed by her side for the entire funeral and the days following. She stayed at my family's house and I made certain to always be there for her. As a result, we exchanged phone numbers, allowing me to maintain contact with her. Later, she requested that I download Marco Polo, which I did. We would send each other videos and have conversations about once a month. I always made a point to check up on her. Then she began responding less frequently. I never asked why, but she revealed that her mom insisted she keep her phone with random restrictions throughout the day. Kia was ensuring that Ava had minimal contact with anyone related to Ace. Thankfully, I had never done anything to get on Kia's bad side, so she was fine with me conversing with Ava. On Christmas of 2023, Ava sent me a Marco Polo to wish me happy holidays. We talked for quite a while about our Christmas gifts, how life was going, and so on. She was home alone. Kia and everyone else had gone to visit her husband's family, whom Ava disliked. They left her home alone on Christmas. My heart broke witnessing how unloved she seemed in that house. Not even a week later, she sent a Marco Polo stating she was deleting the app due to low storage on her phone. However, she never appeared in the video. It was merely a view of the ceiling with text overlaying the image. I am almost certain it was recorded by Kia. I have not been able to contact Ava since. My grandparents are still able to see her occasionally, and they always make sure to provide me with updates. Apparently, for her birthday and every other occasion, all Ava has requested is disinfecting wipes. Kia always buys her some, but they are always the wrong brand and scent. Ava specifically only wants disinfecting wipes because they were the kind her dad used, and the scent reminds her of him. She still loves her father very much and misses him every day. I desperately want to help her escape that household. I know she is being treated as less than human, and that Kia suppresses the memory of her father daily. Kia is psychotic. The lengths to which she has gone to brainwash Becca and cut Ace out of their lives are absurd. She has also harassed our family after his death, attempting to collect anything that belonged to him. That would be an entirely separate story that could take as long as this one, detailing all the chaos she caused. Kia, her husband, and their friends continue to celebrate my uncle's death. On the anniversary of his passing, they drive 3 hours to his grave and drink excessively. They leave all their trash on his grave. My grandmother essentially monitors Ace's grave from a distance all day so she can clean up after they leave. Now the most disturbing part, which solidified my hatred for Kia and her influence on Becca. Our family wanted nothing to do with Ace's car. There was no way we would want the vehicle in which he died. Kia ended up taking it. She replaced the driver's seat and still possesses it. Every Halloween, she parks it in front of their house and places a skeleton with a gun in the driver's seat as a decoration. They mock my deceased, innocent, mentally distressed uncle, whose death they caused by using the car as a decoration with a skeleton intended to represent him. I do not care who you are. That is profoundly disturbing, purely psychotic behavior. I contacted Becca after Ace's suicide before I was aware of her role in everything, and she seemed far too comfortable with his death. She sent laughing emojis and ha-ha after every message while I was trying to have a heartfelt conversation about her father's suicide. Kia has manipulated her into becoming entirely deranged. In fact, she drives the car in which he took his own life. That was the car she chose to drive as soon as she obtained her license. Please, no one look into this story further, as it has been and continues to be an incredibly difficult experience for our family, and I would hate for it to resurface. I have just been holding on to all of this for years and needed to express it. I wish more than anything that I could contact Ava and assist her in escaping that environment. I do not want her to continue to suffer or be influenced by the craziness surrounding her. I hope with all my heart that she eventually cuts ties with her mother, sister, and stepfather's family. As soon as she turns 18, I will do everything in my power to help her escape. I sincerely hope she retains her good values and morals despite what she is surrounded by. So yes, I am hopeful that my cousin breaks ties with her mother as soon as she turns 18. I am unsure how much I will respond to comments on this story, as it is a throwaway account and I do not intend to check back frequently. I might provide an update when Ava turns 18 and hopefully accepts help from me and my family. But that will not be for at least another 3 years. Thank you for reading and allowing me to share this. A Story 3. Fell for my summer crush hard, but you can't be my girlfriend, just friends nearly broke us. After a wild visit, I told him I love you, but got no reply. Am I chasing a dream or the perfect disaster? As we plan to move together, what lies ahead? I 22 years old female met him 21 years old male last summer during an internship in California where we were both out of state. I had only 3 weeks remaining in my internship when we met, but we immediately clicked and started spending time together every day. They were the best 3 weeks ever. We share so much chemistry, it is incredible. If we lived in the same state, I would date him in an instant. The issue is that we are in two different states on opposite sides of the country, so I initially believed it would simply be a summer fling and we would move on with our lives. However, we continued texting, never truly wanting to stop communicating. Our connection was clearly more profound than just a matter of proximity, and it evidently was not merely a fling. I ended up visiting him back in California about a week after my internship ended because he still had some time left in his. After that, he visited me in my state, I visited him in his state, and so on. However, we can both be unkind to each other at times, and we argue frequently. During the first 6 months, it was difficult for him to compliment me or genuinely act like we were in a relationship because we were so far apart. I guess he wanted to remain friends and not complicate things by labeling it. Despite these issues, we continued talking because it was obvious we still liked each other a lot and did not want to stop. The most recent time he visited me, I had actually lost feelings for him over the previous month due to issues I mentioned earlier. His poor treatment of me, lack of compliments, and a particular instance when we were on FaceTime and I noticed the reflection of Tinder on his glasses. That was the final straw for me. However, he had already booked the trip and was going to come. A week before he arrived, I called him to explain that if he came, we would just remain friends and I did not want to engage in anything physical with him. He was genuinely surprised because I had always been the one wanting to be intimate with him and usually initiated it. He appeared as though he might cry. Nevertheless, he accepted my decision and seemed to respect it after I explained my reasoning. However, when I picked him up from the airport, he acted as if I had never said anything like that and was being flirtatious and overly affectionate more than usual. Once we were in my room, he attempted to initiate intimacy, and I had to remind him of my earlier words and express that I was serious. He looked so sad and embarrassed, and we finally had a genuine emotional conversation for the first time. I shared everything that had been bothering me during the 6 months we had known each other, and he apologized for his behavior, explaining some childhood experiences that might have contributed to those patterns. Ultimately, I caved and permitted us to be intimate during that trip, and I am genuinely glad that I did. For the remainder of our time together, he transformed into a completely different person, sweet, frequently complimenting me, and the whole experience was beautiful and amazing. I fell in love with him during this trip because he was treating me the way I had longed for him to treat me throughout the past 6 months of our relationship. At the end, I even told him I loved him, but he did not reciprocate, which I found amusing. I did not expect him to say it back because we were not officially dating, but I simply wanted to express my feelings. I have never liked anyone more than him in my life. I usually end up disliking every man I meet who could be a potential romantic partner, let alone liking them this much. I am incredibly attracted to him. When I first saw him, my jaw dropped because I thought he was the most attractive guy I had ever seen. We have so much fun together, share similar interests, enjoy engaging conversations, possess the same sense of humor, laugh together often, enjoy fun activities together, and have aligned love languages, career aspirations, and life goals. We are best friends. The limited number of weeks we have spent together in person are among the best of my life, even though we did not engage in many thrilling activities. I would rather spend time talking or hanging out with him than with anyone else in my life. Even when we argue, I still do not mind, as I enjoy conversing with him. I think about him constantly, and I know he thinks about me just as much. I want to marry him and have his children, despite the reservations of those around me, including my own. To put it succinctly, he may not possess husband material, and it is easy to compare his actions toward me with what other boyfriends do for their girlfriends. Moreover, we both tend to bring out the worst in each other, as we did not exhibit nearly as much toxicity in our past relationships. Yet I genuinely believe he is the notebook guy, and if I do not end up with him, I will think about him for the rest of my life. Regarding future plans, we both intend to move to California together in hopes of finding jobs there. After that, we will give dating an honest attempt and see where it leads us. I can only envision our relationship growing stronger because most of our issues stem from either the long-distance aspect or the fact that we are not officially a couple. The more time I spend with him, the more I love him. I recognize that he is emotionally unavailable and has numerous issues we need to address together, but I believe he is worth it. Many online sources suggest, if he does this, leave him. If he does not do this, leave him. But I think the expectations are excessively high nowadays. I do not find most men I have ever spoken to appealing, nor do I think it is likely I will find someone I like as much as him who has resolved those issues. I would prefer to put in the effort with him and help him become the love of my life. Currently, while we are still in a long-distance arrangement, he does not wish to label our relationship, nor does he want to express his love for me, even though it is quite apparent he does. I will not let it trouble me too much unless it persists when we live near one another. To summarize, I am in a long-distance situationship, but I love him, even though we can be toxic to each other at times. I want to marry him, but I am uncertain if this is just my naive young heart speaking or if there is something genuine between us. We are planning to move to the same state in a few months to give it a try. P.S. There is a slim chance he might come across this since it is obviously Reddit and public, and it clearly pertains to him. There is a lot in this post that I have never directly shared with him, but if he sees it, I would not really mind either.